The first time the fork moved, the world stopped turning. It was a simple, tarnished silver fork, one they had set out every single evening without thought. Part of a macabre ritual they had come to see as a quirky, harmless chore. But tonight, as the clock struck 7, the utensil lifted into the air of its own accord. It hovered for a heart-stopping second above the empty plate, a sliver of polished metal caught in the warm glow of the dining room light. Then, with a faint, unmistakable scrape against the china, it descended, scooping up a portion of the rosemary roasted chicken Mia had just served. The morsel vanished into the empty space above the chair, followed by the sound of quiet, deliberate chewing. Mia dropped her own fork. The clatter against her plate was a gunshot in the sudden, suffocating silence. Her eyes, wide with a primal fear, met Leo's across the table. His face had drained of all colour, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the wooden table. They had joked about their silent guest, their invisible roommate. They had toasted the absurdly low rent, laughing at the previous landlord's stern warning about this one non-negotiable clause. It was a silly superstition, a charming old-world eccentricity. Now, the air itself felt thick and heavy, tasting of cold iron and a history they had foolishly ignored. The dream apartment, their perfect new beginning, was suddenly a cage with an unseen occupant. Leo's mind raced, rewinding through the past 6 weeks. The real estate agent had been a nervous, sweaty man, his eyes darting around the spacious, sun-drenched rooms as if expecting a reprimand from the walls themselves. He had mentioned the clause, almost as an afterthought, right before they signed the lease, mumbling about respecting the apartment's traditions. The rent was half the market price for a brownstone, with original crown moulding and a working fireplace. They were so blinded by the steel they signed without another thought. They even bought a special, ornate place setting for the 4th chair, treating it like a dark, inside joke. The chewing continued, a soft, wet sound that seemed to amplify until it was all Mia could hear. It was the sound of their normalcy, being devoured. She watched, paralyzed, as the knife now sawed gently through a piece of chicken, the motion smooth and practiced. This was not a random event. This was a habit, a long-established routine that had just, for the first time in their tenure, become visible, or at least audible. The stakes were no longer about cheap rent. They were about their sanity, their safety, the very reality they thought they inhabited. Later that night, huddled under their duvet as if it were a shield, they whispered frantic plans. They would investigate. They would find out who or what the last tenant was. The internet yielded nothing but dry property records and a blurry, decades-old news article about the building. The previous owner, an elderly woman named Agatha, had lived there for 50 years, before peacefully passing away in her sleep. The article's only strange detail was a quote from a neighbour, mentioning Agatha's devotion to her solitary dinners. The clue felt insignificant, a dead end in a puzzle they didn't understand. The next evening, the dread was a physical presence in the apartment, coiling in their stomachs as the hour approached 7. They prepared the meal with trembling hands, the simple act of seasoning a salad feeling like a prelude to a séance. They took their seats, their own food tasting like ash, and right on time, the fork lifted. This time, the invisible entity didn't just eat. It seemed to savor. A sip of red wine was taken from the 4th glass, the liquid level visibly dropping. The casual normalcy of the action was more terrifying than any grotesque manifestation could ever be. A new, chilling pattern emerged over the following days. The entity began to express preferences. On Tuesday, when Mia served broccoli, the vegetable was pushed to the far edge of the plate with the knife, untouched. On Wednesday, a slice of chocolate cake was devoured with such speed the fork clinked rapidly against the plate. It had likes and dislikes. It had a personality. This shift from a passive presence to an active, opinionated participant filled them with a deep, unsettling horror. They were not just observing a ghost, they were catering to its tastes. Driven by a fear that was curdling into desperation, Leo ventured into the building's basement, a place of dripping pipes and the smell of damp earth. He found a stack of discarded, mouldy ledgers in a cobwebbed corner, the building's old maintenance records. Flipping through the brittle pages, he found a recurring, odd entry from the 1970s. Complaint from 2B, noise from 2C, sounds of multiple persons dining. Investigation found only tenant Agatha Claiborne, alone. The entries stopped abruptly in 1978, the year Agatha died. The curiosity gap widened, threatening to swallow them whole. What happened in 1978? The apartment itself began to change. Mia would find a book left open on the armchair, a book she had not been reading. The radio would switch on to a static-filled classical station, one they never listened to. One afternoon, she came home to find all the photographs on the mantelpiece tilted slightly to the left, as if someone had methodically adjusted each one to see them better. The silent guest was no longer confined to the dinner table. It was exploring. It was making itself at home, asserting its presence in their lives, inch by terrifying inch. The climax came on a rain-lashed Friday. A power outage plunged the apartment into darkness, broken only by the flashes of lightning. They sat at the dinner table, the ritual now an unshakable compulsion, their faces illuminated in stark blue-white bursts. In the sudden silence, devoid of the hum of appliances, they heard it clearly. Not just chewing, a low rhythmic humming, a tuneless, contented sound coming from the empty chair. It was the sound of a creature of habit, utterly at peace in its domain. In that moment, they knew they were the guests. They were the temporary occupants in this thing's eternal lease. The next morning, they packed in a frantic, silent hurry. The dream was a nightmare. The steal had cost them their peace. As Leo carried the last box out, he took one final look at the dining table. The fourth place was set, waiting. And for a fleeting second, he saw not a monster, but a profound, endless loneliness. They had not been haunted by malice, but by the echo of a life so rigid, so solitary, that its routines had etched themselves into the very fabric of the home. The last tenant never left because she had nowhere else to go. The moral of the story, this tale reminds us that not all prisons have bars. Some are built from routine and solitude. The ghost was not evil, but a captive of its own eternal habits. For us, the lesson is to live fully and connect deeply, ensuring our lives are defined by vibrant experiences, not just empty rituals. Be wary of deals that seem too good to be true, for the true cost is often hidden in the fine print, waiting to be discovered too late. If this story sent a chill down your spine and made you think twice about that oddly cheap rental, then give us a like and let us know your thoughts in the comments. For more tales that blur the line between dreams and nightmares, subscribe to Story Palace and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Your next adventure into the unknown awaits.
nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy, and silently, it could build and build until you finally see.